Hi, boys and girls. Mrs. Whiteman here. I just wanted to tell you how much I miss you and that it's been a little too quiet around here waiting for you. But I thought I'd start reading one of my favorite books. A lot of times people ask me, what is my favorite book? Here it is. Dean Koontz, before he wrote adult scary books, he wrote some great children's stories. So I'm going to read you a chapter or so, and that way you guys can get to know a little bit of why this is my favorite book. You'll see on the cover, those are the good toys. And then on the back cover, those are not the good toys. And this story is about a toy maker that makes toys come to life for children that are in need of a special friend at certain times in their life. So as I go through, Miss Bowman is doing a great job helping me videotape, but I want to be able to show you all the wonderful pictures that this book has. So sit back, relax, and let me do a little bit of reading to you. Amos the bear, I'll give you a shot of Amos, was standing on the toy maker's bench, looking through a casement window at the blue and black storm clouds rolling in from the east. He was filled with great sadness and fear. This is a dark day, he thought, and he shivered. Stripped of leaves, the November trees were stark, like many armed black skeletons. The red light of a setting sun was fading fast. Soon night would fall, and it would be very dark. The oncoming storm would blot out the moon and the stars. To Amos, it seemed as if dawn might never come again, as if the world would forever turn into a deep gloom. The day was grim, not merely because of the weather, but because Mr. Isaac Bodkins, the toy maker, had died. To his creations, the magical stuffed toy animals he had called Oddkins, he was Uncle Isaac, and they were deeply saddened and frightened by his passing. For many weeks, the old man had known that he was dying, but at the end had come quicker than he had expected. This morning, feeling tired, he had decided to lie down on the couch in one corner of his workshop just to rest for half an hour before lunch. And he passed away peacefully in his sleep. Sam Jenkins, who owned a toy shop and sold Uncle Isaac's creations, had come to pick up some merchandise and had discovered that the old man's sleep was deeper than it should have been. And while all the stuffed toys sat on the shelves and workbenches pretending not to be alive, Mr. Jenkins called the doctor. The doctor came, carrying a bag filled with instruments and medicines, and seeing the physician, the Oddkins each had felt a surge of hope, but eventually Uncle Isaac's body had been taken away. Now the stuffed animals were alone in the rambling old house that had been Mr. Bodkin's workplace and home. It was still home of the Lebanon toys and beloved old man Small company. Grief was so heavy in the air that Amos, the bear, felt it pressing on him, making his shoulders sag. And then comes that picture.
This is on. I'm trying to get the camera to go. Hold on. One second. Oh, there we go.
Technical difficulties here, folks. He would have wept if he could have formed any tears. With his great skill and magic, Mr. Bodkins had given them life to the toys he had made, but Amos was still only a teddy bear after all. He could not produce tears, no matter how much he ached to shed them. Behind Amos in the workshop stood the others sobbed. Like them, they were unable to weep. They could make the soft sounds of grief, though. Amos would not permit himself one sob. He must be strong, for Uncle Isaac had chosen him to lead the others in this terrible time. Last week, Isaac had taken Amos into the book-lined study at the front of the house, where they could have a private conversation. The toy maker had sat behind his richly carved desk while Amos had sat on top of it, basking in the red, yellow, blue, green light from the stained glass lamp. The old man had talked to Amos about Amos's destiny, and had revealed certain secrets. So now they're going to go back and tell you a little bit about that conversation with Uncle Isaac and Amos. Leaning back in his big leather chair, Uncle Isaac folded his aged but still strong hands on his round belly, peering over Amos over the tops of his glasses. "You know the reason you were made, of course. The reason I've made all the Oddkins." Amos sat straight up and proud. "Oh, yes, sir, yes, sir. One day I'll be put on display in a toy shop. I'll be sold as a gift for a very special child who will desperately need a special friend." That's correct, Mr. Bodkin smiled and nodding approvingly. It will be a little boy or a girl who, if he grows up whole and happy, will contribute something of importance to the world. A special child, as you have said, but this will be a child who has to face enormous problems or must live through a terrible sorrow. Perhaps a child whose parents mistreat him. Or maybe one who will fall ill and need tremendous courage to pull through, Amos said solemnly. Or a child whose mom or dad dies or loses a sister. Yes, but whatever the child's problems, you will be there to offer comfort, counsel, and love. You must help the child grow up confident and loving, regardless of all what cruelties the world inflicts on him. Because you see, this special little girl or boy of yours will perhaps become a doctor who will save lives, or a diplomat who negotiates peace, or even a teacher, if he can only grow up whole and happy. But if he's broken by the tragedies he must endure, he will never have a chance to make this world a better place. Sitting on the desk in the multicolored light of the stained glass lamp, his furry legs straight out in front of him, leaning back on his forepaws, Amos sighed heavily. Gosh, that sure is a big responsibility. Enormous, Mr. Bodkins agreed. And you must always remember that you and all the other Oddkins have to conceal your missions from everyone, except, of course, from each other and from your special child. In the privacy of that boy or girl's room, you'll be alive, but to the rest of the world, you must pretend to only be a stuffed animal. Oh, I'm good at that, Amos said happily, and he went stiff, and his eyes were suddenly as blank as painted buttons. Very good, Uncle Isaac said. Excellent. Amos grinned, and his eyes became expressive and warm again. If you let another child or any adult see your magical life, you won't remain effective as a secret friend to your assigned child. Yes, sir, I understand, Amos said. It was also understood that once his assigned child's crisis had passed, when his secret friend was no longer needed, the magical life would drain out of Amos as it went out of every Oddkin sooner or later. Then he would only be a teddy bear, just like any other. And in time, his special child would forget that Amos had once really been alive. Their secret conversations and adventures would seem to have been fantasies, merely games that the child had played in a more innocent days before growing into the no-nonsense world of being an adult. This fading way of life was a difficult thing for Amos to accept, but he understood that true magic was strictly for children and would only confuse and upset most adults. Many people have been guided by one Oddkin or another in their troubled youth, but none of them remembered the truth after they grew up. Amos rose and walked around the stained glass lamp, stepping over the cord and frowning at the gleaming oak desktop. Something I've been wondering about, he said, which he would have seemed, in a gruff voice, which he would have seemed too deep for his small body, which was strangely fitting him. What happens when the life goes out of me, Uncle Isaac? Do I have a spirit? Does my spirit go to heaven or someplace? What happens to me? Is that one of the secrets you brought me here to tell me about? Uncle Isaac shook his head. His fine white hair gleamed like moonlit snow. No, I can't tell you that, dear Amos. What comes after life must remain a mystery to you, as it is a mystery to all human beings, including me. Even then, Amos had known Uncle Isaac was dying. The old toy maker had not hidden his illness from his creations. In fact, he had encouraged them to get used to the idea of his passing. A new magic toy maker must be chosen during the next few weeks. And when Uncle Isaac died, the Oddkins who were still in the shop would have to help the newcomer settle into this new job. A few days ago, Uncle Isaac told them that he, their maker, would soon trade this world for another. And the Oddkins had pretended to be strong and stout-hearted, and they pretended to accept his approaching death with regret and sadness, but with grace and courage. In reality, they were sick with grief and scared, very, very scared. Death, Uncle Isaac had told them, is not an end. It's only a station between two places. There's no beginning beyond death. There is a new beginning beyond death. Don't be afraid for me. I'm merely going on to a new life of some kind that I can't imagine, but that I know will be even better than the life I've had here. But we'll miss you, Butterscotch the dog had told him. Can you see Butterscotch? Unable entirely to conceal her misery. And I'll miss you, he said, but I'll never forget you. And memory will always be together. Memory, Skippy the rabbit. Have you found him? Said scornfully, brash as usual. He had cocked his head to the direction of his floppy ear, as if it was pulling him over on his side. The other ear was straight, and he had squinted at the toy maker. Memory's not good enough. Memories fade. Mine doesn't, said Burl the elephant. Well, Mr. Hose Nose, everyone else's memory fades. Too bad everyone isn't an elephant, said Burl. Have you seen Burl yet? Heaven forbid, Skippy declared. If elephants were the only creatures in the world, they'd eaten everything down to the bare rock and would have died out long ago. Walking stomachs, that's what the elephants are. Can you imagine? All of the trumpeting and the thunderous pounding of those billions of big feet. Before Burl could respond, Skippy had looked at Uncle Isaac and said, No, sir, having you in a memory isn't good enough by half. But I'm afraid it's going to have to be good enough, Uncle Isaac said, quietly but firmly. And now in his study, he was equally quiet and firm with Amos. Worry about this life, Amos. Worry about doing well in this world. The next world, whatever it is, will take care of itself. Here's a picture. Like I said, there's not a lot of pictures in the story, but there are some. Though he was only a stuffed toy bear, Amos had a good, solid, bearish personality. He was slow to become excited, he was patient, and he tended to think about all the possibilities before acting. So he stared at Uncle Isaac for a moment, finally nodded, sat down on the desk bladder, and he said, Okie doke, which was his way of saying, all right, okay, I'm agreeable to that. Leaning forward in his chair, closer to the lamp, Uncle Isaac said, But I will tell you the meaning of the symbol on your sweater. Amos's eyes widened. You will? Ever since he had come alive into the old man's workbench a couple months ago, Amos had wondered about the mysterious symbol in his blue sweater. Will you really tell me? Alpha and Omega, Uncle Isaac said. Huh? That means the first and the last. Frowning, Amos said. The first and last what? Uncle Isaac leaned even closer until his kind face was like a moon hanging over Amos's world. After I have passed away, there'll be a time during which the new toy maker is not fully in charge. After all, it takes a while to accept the mantle of magic and to feel comfortable with it. During that time, when the new toy maker is not totally in control, there may be some trouble and some danger. What kind of trouble? What kind of danger? Amos asked, his pleasant furry face settling into a scowl. Uncle Isaac hesitated, and then he sighed. You'll know it when it comes, and then you'll be the first of all the Oddkins, the leader of them in any time of crisis. Me? A leader? I'm not so sure. Yes, you can lead them, Amos. I made you the leader. Pride surged through Amos, and he sat up even straighter and puffed out his chest. He considered what Uncle Isaac had said, and then he nodded. All right, I'll lead them. You can count on me. You will be the first to confront trouble. Yes, Uncle Isaac, I will, Amos said, though he had no idea what sort of trouble he might have to confront. And you will be the last to turn away from it. Amos stood, squared his shoulders, and he nodded. The wire rims of the old toy maker's glasses glinted with the orange light from the stained glass lamp. Spots of blue and red and yellow, Spots of blue and green and red were reflected in one lens. In spite of his cheerful coloration, Uncle Isaac was somber, not like himself at all. In bad times, you will be the first to give heart to your friends, and the very last to be dejected. You'll be first in courage, and the last to be afraid. Me? Said Amos, blinking. Afraid? Not me. I'm not afraid of anything. Nope, no, sirree, not me. But there are things in the world that you should be afraid of, Amos. I should? Amos asked uneasily. And if you encounter them, when you encounter them, you'll feel the cold grip of fear. I will? But you must be the last to give into it. I promise, said Amos. That had been less than a week ago. Now Amos the bear stood on the age-worn workbench and stared out the oncoming storm, and at the descending twilight he felt gripped, not only by grief, but by that cold fear. Uncle Isaac had passed away. The old man had thought he had a few weeks left, but now he was gone, and things that should have been done before his passing, such as choosing the new magic toy maker, remained unfinished. Lightning flickered along the edge of the clouds, and the fiery red sky in the west had turned purple red and would soon be dark. Amos turned from the diamond-paned casement window and surveyed the big room. Ordinarily, in spite of his size, the shop looked warm and cozy. The walls were cream-colored, hand-textured plaster. The floor and the beam ceilings were illustrious dark oak. The many tool and supply cabinets were also of oak, to which Uncle Isaac had added beautifully hand-carved decorated vines and leaves and birds. But today a damp chill reached into every corner of the room. The other Oddkins grew quiet when Amos turned from the window and faced them. 51 of their magic kind were gathered in the workshop, the only ones that had not been sent off to toy shops before Uncle Isaac had passed. There were teddy bears, though none like Amos, and for each Oddkin was a different from all others. There were dogs, a Dalmatian, a Spaniel, a Golden Retriever, a Scotty, and more. Two velvet penguins, a lion with a mane of yarn, a duck, and 3 cats. They stood in small groups on the floor below Amos, or huddled in the corners. Some perched on the tops of the supply cabinets looking down at Amos, while others sat in stunned silence on the sofa where Uncle Isaac had passed away in his sleep only hours ago. I dropped the B from Bodkins and added another D after the O and called you Oddkins, Uncle Isaac had explained to Amos, because you are my kin in a way, my only children. And let's face it, you're all a bit odd. Aren't you, my furry little friend? Odd kin. And you are all wonderfully odd children. I love you all. Amos swallowed a moan of grief and jumped down from the workbench to the stool on which Uncle Isaac had sat when stitching together his wondrous creations. Then, slightly lower perched, he dressed in the assembled toys. We have a difficult and dangerous mission to perform, and we must act tonight. So that's the end of chapter 1, and I'm not going to go on to chapter 2 until maybe tomorrow. But I hope you are enjoying, and like I said, it's one of my favorite books of all time. We miss you. We'll see you hopefully soon. Take care. Bye-bye.